Somebody, please, if you know the answer, please give me the answer. Who is the it girls on Disney Channel right now?
There are none because tween media doesn't exist anymore. There used to be a time where 10 to 15-year-olds had their own world. They had their own movies, shows, and music. And all these forms of media were made with the tween demographic in mind. Shows like Hannah Montana, That's So Raven, Zoe 101, iCarly. It was a sweet spot for an otherwise awkward stage of life. But now it seems as soon as you turn 12, you are automatically switched to adult content. Kids watch streamers, social influencers, Love Island. And now networks like Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, they aren't producing the next It Girls because the It Girls of today are not choosing to go after that sort of fame. They are pursuing internet fame. And it's sad because it seems like that stage of growing up is being forgotten about. And now there's that pressure for tweens to try and achieve an aesthetic that they simply aren't old enough for. Everyone knows that middle school is the absolute worst because you are still trying to figure out who you are. And I can't imagine not having Disney Channel or Nickelodeon during those awkward times. If I ever have kids, they are definitely going to be raised on reruns.
I'm a chronic article reader, and there's this article that came out in the New York Times today about Disney and the decline of the American middle class. And if you have the Times app, you have to go read that article. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. I read it this morning and I have to talk about it because I think this article is a forerunner for what we're seeing in a lot of American culture, not just the decline of the middle class, but how a majority of things that are being created now, by things I mean things in hospitality, especially in the leisure world, right, are being marketed towards the rich, towards the top 20% of American society. And they're kind of just forgetting about the middle class. And that's why in our current world, unless you can pay for upgrades for something, nothing is enjoyable anymore, right? Think about, like, in Disney is an amusement park, as we all know, and Disney used to have this idea, this whole ethos of everyone's a VIP. And when Disney was founded and when it was run for the first couple decades, that was the mindset, right? People from all over are going to come to Disney, but it doesn't matter where they come from or how much money they're spending. Everyone gets the same Disney experience. Everyone waits in line. Everyone does all these things. And how at first Disney was very, very hesitant to like kind of introduce things like Fast Pass and those upgrade type programs because they really wanted to stick to this ethos. But this article points out a crazy statistic. And that's this point right here, right? How in 1992, there were 88,000 households worth 20 million or more. But by 2022, there were 644,000. In the same way that people are falling out of the middle class to the lower working class, the same thing is happening at a smaller number rate to the top 20%, right? It's also increasing massively. And a lot of leisure companies have realized there's no point of tailoring to a declining middle class that's on a budget. They can tailor to the upper class that in theory don't really have a tight budget to adhere to. Those numbers don't really mean much. They're willing to spend a couple thousand more to get a better experience because they have it to spend. And this article follows two families who went to Disney, a traditional American middle-class family and a tech executive family who went. And this difference in their experiences based off the upgrades they're able to buy and afford, and wow. And I feel like we're starting to see this with everything, though, especially in the vacation world. There is nothing left in the middle anymore. Your options are either a Motel 6 or a Marriott Marquis or like a really nice hotel, right? There's no in between anymore. And how normally the cheapest option that's available to you in America, that's on flights, on buses, especially in transport and hotels, really comes with nothing. Think about flights, right? The cheap economy flights, I find, this is not a critique at all, but they don't really come with anything. You don't get any food, you don't get any water, your luggage, you're not guaranteed a checked bag, you have to get so many upgrades to make the experience actually comfortable for you. And it's because the middle class declines and these upper classes, I guess, grow and their wealth explodes. It's not even just necessarily the growth in numbers, right? It's the amount of wealth that the top 20% now have. I read an article talking about how Mark Zuckerberg has more wealth than like most of his entire generation combined. Like if you take all millennials and add up all their money, Mark Zuckerberg might be richer than all of them combined. Like that kind of disparity, they're better off targeting these people who have no budgets, right? And here's the thing, I used to work in nightlife and I low-key saw this. I was a bottle girl, right? The club I worked was very, very exclusive, but it was very small. My club had like 15 tables, and that's really kind of pushing it. But it's because we were 1K when you walk through the door, 1K table mints. Sometimes we would make more on bottle service than the entire bar would make off everyone who came in. Not just my club, it's very, very common. If you go to some of these clubs in New York and LA and Miami, DC, the bottle service alone can make more than the entire bar makes in a night. And that can be even in a pretty small in a pretty big venue. You can have 1,000 people come in and buy a $20 drink and then have one client come in and spend $20K on 4 bottles. And it's very possible. That one person is giving you more money than those 20 people all combined. And $20K is not a big number by any means for New York, LA, or Miami bottle sales, by any means. I've heard numbers that would be ridiculous for bottle service. And sometimes it's one person putting out all that money. So as the club, we've learned to tailor to those individuals. Because that guy coming in to spend $9K, that $9K is more than 15 people buying just to get you. And that's the thing about the world we're living in. What happens when there's no longer anywhere for the middle class to go?
Somebody, please, if you know the answer, please give me the answer. Who is the it girls on Disney Channel right now?
There are none because tween media doesn't exist anymore. There used to be a time where 10 to 15-year-olds had their own world. They had their own movies, shows, and music.
I'm so glad that Ari the Architect made this video because I talk about this all the time. If you are somebody who does not like video essays or long ranting videos, then feel free to scroll because I have things to say. Ari is right. Back in the day, when I was a kid, there were multiple channels that were child-centered. There was music, there were kids' tours, there was something for teenagers and teenagers. There was all of this media with the liminal stage of middle school and puberty and your body developing in mind. What is also developing during that time? Your mind. Super impressionable minds developing. What we are seeing today, and actually it's been a shift for the last, I would say 7 to 9 years, which I will get into later, but the last 7 to 9 years is a desecration of the physical and digital space for teens and for tweens. What does that mean? You're seeing malls dying out. There's no more Disney Channel, there's no more Nickelodeon, there's no more Kids Bop, or maybe there is, but there's barely Kids Bop. There's no more spaces for developing impressionable minds in that middle school tween area to go and make social contact with other people. Now, the pandemic plays a huge role in this, but I feel like we were already on that track before the pandemic. And the reason why I say that is because studios, media, industries realized that it was more expensive. Yes, it was too expensive to keep funding the Hannah Montana World Tour or to cater to such a small and constantly changing demographic of people. It was less lucrative financially to cater to tweens than it was to induct tweens into teenagehood. At first it started there was a blend between teens and tweens. Then it just became tweens into teens and then everybody all into adult and more mature media. The byproduct of this is that their super impressionable minds, yes, I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, being impressionable at that age, and that is not a diss to teens or tweens. It does not mean that their minds are less than. It means that they are experiencing the world with 12 years in the bank. So they're just factually, they just are more impressionable. And if you are 12 to 15 and you're watching this, that's not a diss. That's not a diss because it's just a stage of life. And what that means is more impressionable minds seeing more mature, more adult content earlier means that what they want is more adult. How they want to dress, what they want to buy is more adult. So funneling in more people is influencing their future buying power. If they're not already working at Chick-fil-A, or if they're a teenager, if they're not already working at a retail store or working already, they are primed to want what adults are buying too, if not already buying that, which benefits, you know who benefits way more. Now, I'm ranting and raving. I have a master's degree in education, policy, organization, and leadership. The list goes on. And my concentrations one of them was in global studies. And part of what I focused on was the development of youth and youth as a social construct. How we identify young people now is not how young people globally are identified too. In an American context, what we see as tween or young, that's not a global context. And B, it has not always been this way. We have not always seen the stages 12 years old is a young age. 13, 14, 15, those are your teen years. These are developmental. Now, biologically, they have always been developmental, but we have not always sociologically understood it as such. Now, let's all think together. What happens when there is no longer a differentiation between your tweens, your like liminal stage of life, or one of many, but you know, the one that we view as the liminal stage in youth. What happens when there is no longer content catered to that, when now tweens are consuming mature content? If now a 12-year-old girl is watching Love Island, exposed to SEX earlier, or are exposed to DRUGS, and I'm not spelling for like young people, I'm spelling for the algorithm, but are exposed to that in media earlier, who does this benefit though? Which brings me back to the time frame 7 to 9 years. What has happened in the last 9 years politically, and who might benefit, which we're already seeing, who might benefit from the idea that a 12-year-old, 11-year-old is actually seen as adult? I'll wait. Certain shifts are not separable from the fact that there is limited, specifically tween content. Certain shifts in the United States play a factor in that, a big factor in that. Not just on like a sexualization level, but also just in terms of labor force, in terms of military, in terms of indoctrination, that too. I say all this to say, older Gen Z, it is our responsibility to keep that energy alive, especially because older Gen Z, like, we are the teachers, we are the ones engaging with youth, and I think even when society says that 10 through 15 is an old age, and even though kids are exposed now to things that we were exposed to, but not in like mainstream media, or it was more taboo if we were, I think reminding each other and sharing about Disney Channel, and that's not to say that Disney isn't still doing stuff, but in the context of what Ari the Architect is saying, keeping that alive too, because when the tweens aren't going to keep it alive, like, somebody's got to. And also, as we age, to create third spaces for tweens specifically. And if you work in a school, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. But I feel really strongly about this. I feel like there is so much beauty in your tween years, your middle school years, your awkward years. You're just working through so much mentally, emotionally, socially, with other people, relationally, and there's so much beauty to be seen in experiencing that awkwardness that prepares you for later on in life, which, don't even get me started on that and the pandemic and everything. There's so many think pieces on that, but yeah. If you watch to the end, thank you. If you want me to keep ranting on this, I can forever. And in conclusion,